Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the additions? Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Thank you, Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next is determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start with you, Councillor Peary.
6 and just 6, please.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
7.
Thank you. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take 8, please.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you. Mine was pulled.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson. We have 6, 7, and 8. Oh, well, hold on. I need to apologize. Excuse me. Councillor Abel, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm used to it.
No, but not for me.
Not from you. Thank you very much. Number 10, please.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Number 3, please.
Thank you. Mayor Daw.
Item 16, please.
And Councillor Maracas.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you. So just to confirm, oh, yes, and number 17 needs direction, so I'll pull that one. Thank you. So to confirm, we have 3, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 16, and 17. That's okay with everyone? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was looking for the advisory, the accessibility advisory, and I don't see it here.
Madam Clerk, can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The advisory committee minutes were not on this agenda as they had not gone through the committee for approval as yet. They'll be on the May 3rd General Committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. May I have a motion to adopt the items not requiring separate discussion? Councillor Abel, how about you do that? So I won't. Councillor Abel, Mayor Dawn. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We have one delegation this evening. Very important subject matter, Mr. Chris Dench of our town staff. I believe you are town staff, Mr. Dench.
No, I'm not.
Oh, then, could you please state your name?
Well, I didn't know there was going to be an offer, but that's very kind of you. Thank you. Chris Denick from Aquifer Beach Limited. We're the town's consultant for the development of the Stormwater Master Plan.
Thank you very much. And you have 5 minutes. Have you been informed of that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick overview of the agenda. Just going to quickly go through the Stormwater Master Plan from a project context, a little bit about stormwater, the project background objectives, study approach, how we develop the management units, the study process, criteria, preferred approach, conclusions, recommendations, and we're going to do this hopefully in 5 minutes. The Lake Simcoe Protection Plan under Policy 4.5 required that all municipalities within the jurisdiction complete a stormwater master plan within 5 years. The Comprehensive Stormwater Master Plan developed for the town of Aurora satisfies that requirement, as well as meeting the Class Environmental Assessment master planning process. The important thing here is that the Comprehensive Stormwater Master Plan was approved by the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority in October of this year, or sorry, of 2015. In terms of stormwater, very quickly, we kind of read this chart starting in the natural groundwater condition, and we kind of read it as an S, and we get to the development condition of 70 to 100% impervious. And that's the type of impervious that we see in major urban cities in Ontario. And of course, what happens is we reduce groundwater recharge, so deep infiltration goes from 25% down to 5%, and then we drastically increase runoff. And this is typical, these numbers are generally good approximations, what happens as we develop the urban area. And what we're trying to do is return that balance back to the natural condition, and that is always our goal. What we typically see from a stormwater impacts perspective, we see increased flooding because of that increased runoff. We see obviously increased erosion in our water courses. We see poor aesthetics, so that can be, there's the City of Toronto there after a rain event, and we also have algal blooms, which is a problem for Lake Simcoe as we get eutrophication and nutrients in our local waterways. Loss of base flow is a major concern for fisheries habitat, and then of course we all know that the impacts to water quality. And this is not unique to Aurora, but it's unique to every municipality that's developed over the last 100 years dealing with stormwater management. In terms of the town of Aurora and some background, so Aurora is one of 7 municipalities located in the East Holland River. It is one of Lake Simcoe's basin's most populated and urbanized subwatersheds. It is also the most degraded because of that. So that's just some context as to what we're dealing with in the town of Aurora, and we are in the headwaters of that basin. So the objective here is to develop a comprehensive stormwater master plan to meet the objectives of Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. We want to reduce loadings of phosphorus to that lake and nutrients, as well as reduce the discharge of pollutants to the lake and its tributaries. Lake Simcoe put out a 10-step process to help guide these master plans, and this comprehensive master plan was developed using those 10 steps. We've developed management units for new development in and outside the Oak Ridges Moraine, the existing urban areas, as well as Greenfield. And you see we've covered the entire municipal boundary with management units. These have specific direction as to how to move forward in terms of development. And retrofitting, I should mention as well. In terms of existing stormwater management, these are all the existing locations of stormwater management that we have in the town of Aurora. So we have 60 stormwater management facilities. 16 of those are for quantity control, 36 do quantity and quality. We have 8 private facilities, and we have generally a tally of what kind of control we have in the urban system. We followed a process, looked at alternative solutions, used evaluation criteria, the physical and natural environment, socioeconomic, technical engineering, and financial. A lot of feedback and working through with the town of Aurora and the Environmental Advisory Committee. We came up with a recommended approach and implementation considerations for that study. We've developed targets for water quality, water balance, water quantity, erosion control, as well as for new development areas. And in terms of the preferred approach, we have pollution prevention plans for the city for the 3 management units. This can be safer alternative products for de-icing, material storage controls, pool drainage, enhanced erosion sediment control, cross connections, public education, as well as advising, recommending that the Yellowfish program be rolled out across the city, which identifies storm catch basins as being directly connected to our water courses. In terms of source controls, we are recommending a social marketing strategy to raise awareness and to update and refine the bylaws within the city to reflect these measures. So what we're looking to do is change people's perspectives in terms of stormwater and have them implement things like a rain garden that you see here, soak-away pits, pervious pavement driveways, rain barrels on their own property to better manage stormwater. We also want to include public land retrofits to be included within the town, so on town property as well. So we want to take a front yard that looks like this into something that looks like this. And that is an improvement from an aesthetic perspective, but it is also an improvement from a stormwater perspective as well. The picture on the right functions at a much higher level in terms of controlling stormwater and pollutants. This is one example of a public land retrofit that was recommended through the master plan. So this site was identified, this is the Aurora Community Center, and it was identified as one of the pilot project sites for the implementation of low impact development because of its high user rate as well as its proximity to water courses and the ability to showcase this technology. So we're implementing at this particular site rain gardens, jellyfish OGS filters, pervious or permeable interlocking concrete pavers, additional rain garden dry ponds, as well as bioswales. So a whole suite of techniques to control stormwater before it reaches Tannery Creek, which is directly adjacent to the site. In terms of conveyance controls, we're talking about the roadway, and we're looking at different policies for roads with ditches and all other roads, and we have set different policies for those in the master plan. So some examples, some retrofits would be Aiden Drive, Bailey Crescent, Davidson Road, etc. And areas that are special policy are within the Oak Ridges Moraine, and that would be Hunters Glen Road, Steeplechase Avenue, etc. So we've developed different policies based on the risk for these areas and different approaches. So we could have a street like this in Aurora that could be retrofitted with a perforated pipe system that you see here to control stormwater. For other roads, we could have bioswales. This is in Mississauga, an example of a bioswale retrofit. Or these two units are bump out bioretention units, one in Ajax and one in the city of Ottawa. We're also, where we cannot implement those, we're looking to use enhanced controls like this phosphorus removal unit. This is what this looks like below ground, and above ground, the picture on top has that unit installed, but it's completely hidden. And it contains this phosphorus absorption media within that vault that removes dissolved phosphorus before it discharges to the watercourse. End of pipe controls at the end of the conveyance system, we recommend the maintenance of ponds, the retrofit of ponds, cataloging private facilities, as well as undertaking a detailed assessment of new end-of-pipe opportunities. So we've recommended 1 pond for maintenance, 9 ponds for retrofit, the construction of 9 new ponds in the city. There are 3 private ponds that we think should be cataloged. And then finally, from a stream erosion perspective, we are recommending that the town complete a citywide erosion control master plan to complement the stormwater master plan. These are example of 2 erosion sites in the town of Aurora. And what we really would like to see going forward is, to give you an example, this is a degraded water course, to go from this before to the same water course after restoration. And that is a project that was completed in 2014 by Aquifer Beach. And it just gives you a sense of where we're trying to go in the erosion master plan. In terms of conclusions and recommendations, there's a comprehensive set. We've asked that the plan be adopted as set out in the comprehensive master plan, that the town-wide erosion master plan be undertaken in the future, that the town consider the implementation of the identified pollution control measures, and the town consider, for the purposes of long-term stormwater management planning, a market strategy to encourage source controls on private property. We've also asked that the town implement low-impact development retrofits on public land to increase public awareness, to undertake the retrofit of existing town right-of-ways with stormwater management controls. The recommendations include that the town undertake the retrofit of the 9 identified pond facilities as per the recommendation, and that for all end-of-pipe facilities, new and retrofits, that we consider habitat enhancements per the 2007 Environmental Advisory Committee report on that topic. We would like, going forward, the town to review the stormwater management policies in light of this document, and that future private development and proposed changes to existing private developments in the town of Aurora shall comply with the recommended approach and the use of treatment train per the comprehensive stormwater master plan. And that the town continue to complete the recommendations of the previous reports, including the XCG study 2007, as well as the repair of any broken and collapsed pipes, removal of sediment debris and outfall structures, etc. So we're maintaining the good work that's already been taking place and enhancing it where we can. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's a very comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Do I need a motion? A motion to receive. Thanks, Councillor Humphreys. Thanks, Councillor Tom. Any questions, Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. It's very, very good presentation. Sort of, it looks like it's a great plan. We're hopefully adopting it and continue to make improvements that we have to. Where are we sort of in comparison, in your perspective, to other municipalities in terms of how we're doing with improving our stormwater management and coming up with these, better solutions to really control what we have out here?
Through you, Madam Chair. We've been fortunate enough to work across Ontario and the country, and Aurora is, the challenges that you face are very similar to all the other municipalities. You are not as developed as, say, the City of Toronto, and therefore your problems are maintainable or manageable at this stage. I think this plan lays out a very comprehensive framework for you for the next 10 to 15 years on projects that can be implemented, that are financially viable, and that can really improve the health of the watershed. So I think it's a good plan that, when put forward, will make a difference.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, the policy document that set out that we were to do this work said that it would be completed within 5 years, or should be completed within 5 years of its approval in 2009. So we're a little bit late by my standards. Is that typical across all of the municipalities that fall into this LSRCA zone?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe that this comprehensive master plan was the second or third approved by the Conservation Authority. We were lucky enough to be the second. The town of Aurora, to my understanding, was the first to follow the 10-step process. Unfortunately, or fortunately, how you look at it, potentially part of the guinea pig process to go through that process. But we worked very well with the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority through this project and the past projects, and it was a very good process, and they fully endorsed the report.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Denish, for coming out. Could you give us a sense from your experiences as to the uptake in by the development community and/or the municipalities in your area that you deal with respect to LID versus stormwater management ponds? Stormwater management ponds certainly were considered to be the cat's meow when they were brought in, when the concept was brought in, but they've turned out to be an extremely expensive methodology of managing stormwater, especially when you have to go in and clean them out and maintain them. Could you give us a bit of a sense on the LID uptake?
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair. We've been fortunate enough, and we will take part of the blame. We wrote the 2003 Stormwater Management Manual. We are currently writing the new ministry update to that manual, which will focus on low-impact development. The development community that we have polled and worked with for municipalities across Ontario have been generally large adopters of low-impact development. One, they see not only the financial benefit, but they are also able to market the low-impact development approaches as enhancements to their development. In the same way that in mid-2000s, early 2000s, developers realized that properties that back on a stormwater ponds come at a premium. So we now have developers that are offering rain gardens as part of a landscape upgrade or permeable pavement driveways. According to the development community, it's the municipality and the province that's standing in their way, and according to the ministry, it's the developers that don't want to get on board. My opinion is that we are at the cusp of really moving forward on this, and I think this watershed is going to be one of the first because of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. Most of the developers that we know are willing to implement this and are actually asking to get it implemented, but to also receive some sort of acknowledgement that these things work and that they are an effective control.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, thanks for the presentation. Under the recommendations and conclusions, number 10, it mentions that all future development shall be in compliance with the recommendations of the master plan. And I'm just curious to how much weight does the master plan have as far as, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, as far as can applications be denied just on the basis that they're not complying to the master plan itself?
Through you, Madam Chair, the planning process is somewhat separate from the master plan process itself. We've tried to align the master plan with what we think are the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan policies. But what we're really asking is that the controls, the practices that are used match what we're asking for in the master plan. So a treatment train approach, which was the original intent back in 2003, start with source control, then do conveyance control as it flows, then do end of pipe pond, versus just what we're doing now, which is just at the end of the pipe. So the recommendations, we do have requirements for new development in there, and they do align with other policies in the watershed. So I think they're companion documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I missed something at the very beginning. Did you say that something about 70% impervious pavement in municipalities?
Through you, Madam Chair, we see one of the things that we find is when we have visitors that come up from the U.S. and they fly into Toronto, Pearson, and they go, oh my goodness, that is the most dense city that I've ever seen, other than outside Manhattan. Density is our #1 challenge in Southern Ontario. The majority of the population lives within a couple hundred kilometers of the lake. We do not have density levels like this in the U.S. And so we have municipalities, City of Toronto, Hamilton, and others that are approaching 100% impervious. So there's no impervious surfaces left. We don't have those kind of levels in Aurora. We generally are in the 50 to 60%, which is what we would expect from a residential, industrial, commercial development. But there are pockets that would approach the 90% impervious level.
Thank you. So when you said reduce stormwater discharge, including runoff, to return back to a natural condition, what do you mean exactly by that?
Through you, Madam Chair, the intent really is to return, is basically to achieve a water balance. So in a pre-development condition, if we had a green field, we have so much water going into the ground, so much runoff, so much evaporation. We're trying to bring back natural processes to mimic that water balance. Where we have an existing urban area, it's impossible to go back to greenfield. But what we would like to see and what the master plan advocates for is that we do the greatest extent possible on those retrofit areas so that we're improving its function in terms of stormwater. It's in new development, it is possible to match existing conditions, particularly from a water balance perspective. And that is something that the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority would require. They now require water balance to be met in new development, as well as the phosphorus balance that is required through this Lake Simcoe Protection Plan.
Thank you. And one more fact, you mentioned 60 and 36, 60 stormwater, I'm sorry, I don't really know, something about quality and quantity of water?
Through you, Madam Chair, we qualify or we categorize ponds that provide flood control, quantity control. Some provide both quality and quantity control. So if we look at a dry pond in the city, that's a quantity control facility. If we have a permanent pool of water or it's a pond, it does both generally quality and quantity.
Thank you. And the last question with respect to pervious surfaces, that's fine when the surface is flat. But what happens when you've got a slope surface? It just is, I mean, do you have to do something special to the impervious surface to make it allowed to work properly?
Through you, Madam Chair, it depends on the technology that we're discussing. Permeable pavements, for example, could be placed on slopes up to 12%. I generally wouldn't recommend that, but we have installed them up to 8%. We just recently completed a project with the Region of Peel for a section of arterial road that approaches a large watercourse crossing. It is over 8% slope, and it incorporates bioswales within the center median. So it is possible, but the designers do have to be cognizant of the slope and the velocity of the water. But it is manageable, and there are guidelines out there that help the designer to select and design those practices so that they function properly.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting to me anyway. All those in favor of receiving the delegation? Thank you. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So do we have any presentations by the advisory committee chairs? And I don't know, Madam Chair, is it in order for me to ask if Councillor Abel had any particular questions about the advisory committee minutes?
No, there was a presentation that I thought I would just highlight to council, and that was all
Okay,
I was just
good.
looking
So
for.
you can do that in May.
I was not concerned with anything.
Thank you. Is anyone in the audience here for anything in particular on our agenda items? Any other items? Number 7. Thank you. Thank you. Could I have a motion to bring 7 and 8 forward in that order? Thank you, Councillor Peary, Councillor Tom. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Number 7 is the Mavernack Park conceptual design. That was pulled by Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Oh, I'd like to put the report on the floor, please.
Thank you. I need a mover and seconder for the report before we go forward. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Mr. Downey for bringing the report back a couple weeks in advance of the scheduled date. Can you, the draft design, from what I understand, most people are quite pleased with the original concept design, and through you, Madam Chair, if you would, Mr. Downey, just give us an idea in terms of how the draft concept came about.
Mr. Downey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly. First of all, we looked at some of the other facilities that are within the area to make sure that we were not necessarily duplicating, but we were addressing any needs that we identified, excuse me, within the community. We certainly took some of the comments that we received during council deliberation with regards to some of the elements within the park, as well as some outstanding direction that we received from council with regards to elements in the park. We felt that certainly some of the comments that we received, the community was looking for a park that addressed a wide variety of demographics from an age perspective. So we were looking for something for children, something for adults, something for older adults. Also an area where there could be some open space or some grassed area, some free play area. We didn't want to program the park overly, but we did want to put some elements in the park that we also identified as a shortfall as part of our master plan review. It's one of the reasons that you see a basketball court in the plan. It's why you see tennis courts in the plan. The community gardens is an outstanding council direction. You've asked us to look for alternative locations for community gardens. That's why you see that there. Certainly, there was a pickleball area. For those folks who don't know what pickleball is, very popular seniors game, kind of a cross between badminton and tennis, and extremely popular. They play it over at the senior center as well at the leisure complex, and we actually have the courts at Normweller Park lined to allow outdoor pickleball play. A play area, we haven't identified elements within the play area, but that would be elements that would address not only the smaller children, but toddlers as well. We were looking at providing some shade within the park. As you can appreciate, if you go out there now, not very many trees. We will be planting trees, but it takes a while, so we wanted to make sure that we got some straight shade structures in there. Since this was going to be somewhat of a destination location, particularly with the community gardens, we needed to add parking to the facility, which is the reason you see parking, and then it's all connected through the park with trails. The other element that we try to accomplish with any park design is we try to move some of the facilities as far off the property boundaries as possible, so that we can give the residents or the adjacent residents some privacy with regards to activities happening in the park, and you'll see that the majority of those areas are bermed with plantings in order to provide that privacy.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I know this would be addressed at the open house, but if you could humor me now. I thought that my idea of a community gardens was it's usually located, it's for people who don't have backyards or have tiny backyards so that they can't plant their own garden. What was the thought process behind even considering a community garden in the Mavernack area when there's sufficient backyards, and I don't think the residents would be out there themselves planting? So I'm assuming these would be people that are coming outside the neighborhood to plant a community garden. Is that correct?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Madam Chair, with regards to community gardens, if you recall, this was originally brought forward by Mr. Warrenberg to council, and there was a suggestion that we perhaps put this in an existing neighborhood park, McMahon Park, and if you recall, we did a survey of the community, and this was an established community. They felt that they didn't want to have the garden within the park. However, council did feel that it was something that was worth exploring, and gave us outstanding direction to look at alternative locations for a community garden. So we felt that this was the first opportunity in the development of a new park that would permit this to happen, which is the reason you see it. How are the logistics with regards to the community garden as to the size of it, the number of plots, who would get it? All of those things haven't been determined at this particular time. We are more concerned with whether or not it's something that council and as well as the community would like to see happen within this park.
Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Yeah, and last two questions through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Downey. When do you anticipate the open house to occur? And you state in the report that ideally you would like to have a maximum budget confirmed prior to the open house. I'm just wondering, is that the prudent thing to do, to have a max budget and build to that budget, or is it better to blue sky a design and kind of trim if it happens to go over budget?
Mr. Downey.
With regards to the first question, which is when, we'll determine that once we have council approval. We don't want to anticipate council approval of the plan or moving forward with this project, so we have not selected a date as of yet, and so we have not communicated that. But it would happen within, I would say, a month or so. We certainly want to do it as soon as we can. Ideally, it would happen before the summer break, but that would be our goal. With regards to the budget, experience tells us that it's always good to have a budget for a particular park or a particular development. If we go forward to the community and allow blue skying, we could be coming back with a park that's $5 million or $2 million or more than what you had anticipated, and now we're back to council saying, oh, I had no idea it was going to cost that much. Can we cut something out? And then we're going back to the community saying, by the way, the budget is this. So we feel more comfortable if we have an established budget. The program elements within the park can certainly change and alter, and that's the whole idea of going for a public open house. But it's always helpful if we have a parameter budget-wise as to what we're aiming towards. That wouldn't mean that the community couldn't make a case for increasing the budget, but that would be certainly something that they would have to come forward and request some additional funding in order to support some of the initiatives they would like to see. And of course, that would be at council's discretion. But I find it always helpful if we have a target and we have some idea what we might want to put into the park. That way, we're not working with a blank slate with an unknown number.
Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, perhaps to Mr. Downey, in terms of the process. So open house is great. I'm looking forward to that and getting the public feedback to make sure that this is the right start and changes as necessary. But will these be coming to the advisory accessibility committees and perhaps Parks and Rec? Just to
Thank
make
you.
sure.
Good
Prior
call.
to council?
Good questions, Mr. Downey. Prior to also the open house or after the open house?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm at council's discretion. You can certainly take it we can take it any time. If you'd rather have it at the committees prior to going to the public, we can do that. Or we can do the reverse. But I'm at council's pleasure with regards to that. You can determine the timing, whether you'd want to hear what the community wants to say, or whether you want to have more direct direction with that, and so that we could communicate your desires to the community, and that might limit some conversation with regards to any alternatives.
Okay, perfect. So through you, Madam Chair, for me, I'd like to hear from the public, and then whatever that conceptual plan looks like, then to be presented to Parks and Rec and accessibility, so that there's that input from both those committees. And if at all possible, in the conceptual plan, I don't see, I mean, it might be there, but from an accessibility perspective, if there's things in here that is inclusive of everyone. I mean, there's lovely trails, and I just want to make sure that it does come back to those committees prior to council, so we get a fulsome conceptual plan that we can then vote on. And again, I'd like to hear from the public first, and then the committees.
Would you like to make that amendment to the motion?
Sure, if it's appropriate now, I'd like to do that.
Yes, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Abel. Thank you. Councillor Maracas and then Councillor Tom. And Councillor Abel. Oh, sorry, we have to vote on that. Okay, all those in favor? I hate sharing. Okay, Councillor Abel, would you like to speak to that?
I'm in full support of the amendment, Madam Chair. When we talked about this just a few weeks back, my points and comments were that there would be accessible features in the playground. It was not brought out in this anywhere in the report, so I think it's necessary that we give clear instructions. So I will support that, and I think it's also a very good idea to put it through the committees. I mean, I would even ask for comments from the Environmental Committee as well before it comes to council. The better, the more engagement we get, we'll probably have the best presentation before council for consideration. So for a project of this scope, I'm all in favor of the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, would you like to add the Environmental Advisory Committee to this?
Absolutely.
Councillor Abel? I guess you're seconding. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, while I'm comfortable going through to the various committees and having the public open house, what does that, how does that impact, I guess, any sort of timelines or construction of the park? Because I think, I think many of us around the table, as well as residents in the neighborhood, would like to see something sooner rather than later. Granted, it's got to be the right concept, but I just want to get a sense whether or not going through the various committee structures will have any undue delay to the process.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Madam Chair, we didn't anticipate going to all those committees, quite frankly. So yes, it will delay the process. Certainly the committees are going to want to know what the community wanted to say, so we have to set that meeting up first, then make sure we have that information recorded and placed on an agenda, and then I'm not familiar with the agenda for the Parks and Recreation Committee, but I'm not familiar with the agenda for the other two, and that could add 2-3 months to the process. I'm not quite sure. We would do our best to coordinate that as quickly as possible, but I can't make any guarantee at that point. If the committees are having a summer recess, then we're not looking at any meetings until the fall, and so you wouldn't see any construction happening in 2016.
So if I may follow up, originally, in terms of, I guess, when you looked at the report and thought to yourself in terms of a rough timeline, how did you see it unfolding prior to the suggestion of the committees?
Through you, Madam Chair, we certainly understood that council wanted to see this come back sooner than later. That's why we moved the schedule ahead as aggressively as we could. It was always our anticipation that we would go to hold a public meeting as quickly as we could, get that information, come back to council, get some approvals, and go through the tendering process with some hope that we would then get an approved tender from council this year and at least commence construction, whether that's even servicing the lands or getting something started. I think that the community is anticipating something happening sooner than later. That was our original thought. However, if council wishes us to go through the committees, we're happy to do so. I'm just concerned about if it's also council's desire to move as quickly as possible on this project, that's not the route to take.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I think for myself, I wouldn't mind just taking this one step at a time, go to the public, get the ideas, and then figure out whether or not, in terms of timelines, what the impact is or not going to the various committees. Because I think for myself, I'd like to see us move on it this year. I'd hate to see it delayed until 2017. And so if there's an opportunity to do the open house and then have that conversation, whether or not at that time the more appropriate path is to go to a committee or to move forward with it. For me, I'd be more comfortable with that, so I won't be supporting the amendment tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, could it go to the public open house process and to the Accessibility Advisory Committee as an example concurrently?
Why not?
Through Madam Chair, we can certainly do that. Our only concern is when you get conflicting information. So the community may want to do one thing, and the Accessibility Committee might want to do something different, and that may or may not be in support by either one. So that adds some confusion to the process, and that's why I'm suggesting we go to the community, find out what their comments are. We're going to bring the minutes of that to the meeting so that the committees know what they say. Then the committee can make recommendations that either support or go contrary to those requests by the community, and give advice to General Committee for moving this project forward from a design perspective. And that only gets the design approved. We then have to, tender for a landscape architect, get construction drawings, tender documents together, and then go to tender, public tender, before we can ever commence with anything. So there's quite a few steps to take, and I'm not trying to push or move or bypass the input process, but the longer that takes, the further the project goes back.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, and I would agree with going to the public first.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So absolutely the public first, but there's no reason why we can't put special meetings directly after that session, even the next day, for accessibility, Parks and Rec. I mean, we can do a combined meeting. It's very important that we absolutely listen to the public, because this is what they want. This is important to the communities, particularly in that neighborhood. But it's also important that we do this right. It's a huge investment, and we need to incorporate accessibility. It's so critical. The worst thing that can happen is we put a beautiful park there and it's not inclusive of everyone to enjoy, and it would be a real shame. I don't want to risk that. It's way too important to risk that. I had a conversation with the accessibility staff member on this, and they're very much looking forward to this coming to committee. If it doesn't, it would be a real shame. So my suggestion is, let's have the public meeting. Let's plan. If it doesn't fall appropriately in that time frame, let's call it an emergency meeting or a special meeting of the advisory boards, and they'll make a point of being there. I have no question about it. We've done it when we were working on the Canada Post accessibility issues. We made it quickly, and we'll do what's important. It's a passionate group, and they'd love to input. And it won't do anything but enhance what we've got here. I'm not worried about changing the overall design. I think the design is going to be as is, except incorporating perhaps some things for all to enjoy. So it's really important to me that we do it properly in that order. So public input, accessibility, if Parks and Rec or environmental fall after that, that's fine too.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Abel?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And, I would prevail on our CAO to kind of streamline the process. It may appear daunting to some, but I like the simplistic approach that the Mayor and Councillor Humphreys have approached. We can get this information to the committees. They could be invited to the open house. And we could look at the schedules to see how we're going to get this back. Sure, we could delay it. I mean, I've seen reports delayed for 2 years. I mean, it can be delayed, but if you want something brought forward quickly, I've seen them being moved forward in 60 days. So we're cognizant of the fact that we've got 10 weeks before the summer break. We can have an open house. We can get this information to the committees. We can get it back and before council, knowing that we've had full engagement and opinions from our committees that can play a role, and we've asked them to play a role. And that we might have overlooked something, just as we've recognized today that there was nothing put in for accessibility needs. The community gardens, as Councillor Kim, all these things are all going to come back and be thought out to build a park that's going to be the best one that we can. So I think we can go ahead with this in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, I think the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I think is a definite need, and I think we can get that done quickly. I just don't see the need for Parks and Rec and for environmental. Being the chair of environmental, I don't see that they would actually really want to get into this other than just receiving this for information. So I think that aspect, we would just be delaying it. And Parks and Rec, we have our director of Parks and Rec dealing with this, so I don't necessarily see the need of going to Parks and Rec on this one specifically. Accessibility, I see the need for it, and I think we can get that one done quick, and I think we can do it right after, as Councillor Abel mentioned, if we want to get it done, we can get it done, so I do see that need. So I think if we keep the amendment as all three, I will have to vote against it. If you're willing to have it as just the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I'd be all for that, so thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I would agree, accessibility, we certainly, whether it be a building or a park, we do take their thoughts into consideration all the time, and that one is more mandatory. The other two, my concern is you send it to 3 committees and you get 3 different opinions in there, where are we then? And so, again, similar to Councillor Maracas, if it's just the accessibility, I can support it, but as it is with the 3 committees, I'm concerned about the timelines.
I support the amendment as it is. I think it is the work of the committees, Parks and Rec Committee, certainly to comment on new parks, and especially a park as important as this. We've just heard an extensive presentation about environmental issues. Maybe the Environmental Advisory Committee wants to weigh in, but perhaps we can do it by inviting them to the open house and having them or representatives from that committee weighing in. And as Councillor Humphrey says, we really want to do this one right. This is a very important park to the residents in this neighborhood. Call the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm always of the mind that the more feedback you get from different perspectives, the healthier product you'll get. And I suspect that I might be assuming too much, but given the simplicity of the park design and just the nature of the park itself, I don't anticipate too much variance in people's feedback. But you know what, if some information does come back and it is something profound, then all the more reason that we made the right decision to have a different perspective. That said, my question through you to Mr. Downey, when we build a park, are there, just similar to when new commercial or industrial owners take over land, is there not an environmental assessment done to the land? So will there be an environmental assessment done for this parkland?
Mr. Downey or Mr. Simonovskis?
Through Madam Chair, I believe there was an environmental assessment done prior to the purchase of the property. We wouldn't have, my understanding is we bought it without any environmental issues on it. It wasn't going to be something that we were going to do as part of our park construction. We assumed that we had no issues here.
Okay, so through you to Mr. Downey, so can we just verify that there was some environmental evaluation done at that time? And so there's no chance of anything, I mean, the land hasn't been used for anything, but in the last few years, is there a chance that someone might have dumped anything like that? So there's really no reason to have an assessment done? Just want to make sure before a park is built on top of it.
Mr. Downey, you could get back to us for next week or before. Thank you.
Okay, if that's the case, then I don't see the need for, as Councilor Maracas said, as an environmental, go to the environmental committee, the Parks and Rec, Al Downey, or Mr. Downey is a representative there, so I'm all for, I'm in support of Councilor Maracas's recommendation for just the accessibility, but certainly the other committees are welcome to the open house and provide feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
It also seems a little bit absurd to me that we wouldn't include the Parks and Recreation Committee, as this is a park. So I think it makes sense that you would include them and get their feedback. Mr. Downey's great, but he's not a committee member. He is a staff member on that committee. He's our liaison on that. So I would ask that we just call the 3 committees separately in the amendment. And then that way we don't have to keep going around the table to try and find consensus. We'll just take the vote and it falls how it falls.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. That's a good suggestion. So, Madam Clerk, we have an amendment on the table. So the first part of the amendment is that this park design goes to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Is that the way to do it? Sure. Okay. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. The second part is that it goes to the Parks and Rec Committee. All those in favor? That carries. No, it doesn't? It was 5. Okay. And that it goes to the Environmental Advisory Committee. That fails. But Madam Clerk, through you, could we, or Mr. CEO, could we make sure that the Environmental Advisory Committee knows of the open house and it's put on their next report as information? That doesn't have to be a motion. Thank you. Okay, back to the main motion. Does anybody else? Councillor Maracus.
Didn't really have much to say. I just wanted to make this point from before we went into the amendment. I'm looking forward to the public's comments, and I'm looking forward to when that final design concept comes back to us for approval. And I want to thank Mr. Downey for the aggressiveness nature he's taken upon himself to bring this forward in a fast pace. And like I said, I'm looking forward to this when it comes back to us.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, could I ask who designed this?
Oh, sorry. That would be to you, Mr. Downey.
To you, Madam Chair. In-house. We have a landscape architect in-house. However, we will be, as part of the design and construction process, engaging a landscape architect to do the design drawings, specifications, and tender documents.
Through you, Madam Chair, would you mean an external landscape?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
For me, I'd like to see I like seeing options. I mean, if one person might have an idea of this and another, and it's good to see. I agree with Councillor Kim's comments about the community gardens in high-density areas where people do not have the opportunity, but in a residential area such as this, we've seen already in McMahon, where people have land, they can put their own garden. So putting it at the back in there, to me, I'm just sort of wondering, that back corner is vulnerable to certain elements. I tried to keep that element to the front if you can. So I appreciate that there's tennis courts and basketball, pickleball. I like the activities. I like the trees. I think it's a great start, great approach, and we'll get a better idea of what the community wants, and I think it's important.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Similar comments to Councillor Abel. I certainly am a little concerned about the community gardens, given the comments and what we went through with McMahon Park and concerns about having it in a residential neighborhood. Again, I think we'd hear some of the similar comments. Perhaps it's better to look at industrial north as opposed to a residential area. But I like the fact that we have a concept. It's going to start the conversation off. We've already had lots of feedback from residents in the area, and look forward to what comes out of the open house. My only question through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, in terms of the pricing, you've set a tag of $1.3 million. Did you come up with that number because that's sort of, I guess, the average cost per square foot for a park, and you just multiplied it by the size, or is the 1.3 representational of what we spend on a park of this magnitude?
Mr. Downey.
Through Madam Chair, the 1.3 is driven more by the facility fit, and that's why on page 71, our attachment number 2 on the report, we've actually outlined or detailed, itemized, I should say, the actual elements. And that's how we arrived at the 1.3. It is well within, not to use a pun, the ballpark with regards to neighborhood park development. We knew it was going to be somewhere in the $1 million range.
Great, I appreciate that. And I think that, since you've clarified that, we're going out for suggestions, the price tag may fluctuate depending on what the final design is. If we remove something and replace it with something else, it may vary. And so, I'm comfortable doing this knowing that you may come back to us for a slight alteration if we say, for example, get rid of community gardens and add some other sort of facility type structure.
Thank you. Councillors Tom, Humphreys, and Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Mr. Downey, my question's to Mr. Downey with respect to just the mix, and I'm just more talking about what to include for the open house. I don't need to spend much time talking about it now, but I mentioned to you earlier I had a conversation with the president of the Aurora King Baseball today, and just wanted to know if it's possible just to render, like you did with the rendering that was provided in the report, other options for people at the open house to see what a soccer field would look like or a baseball diamond would look like, just to provide the options to the public. It might not be what they want at that park, but as I mentioned, I spoke with the president of the Aurora King Baseball Association, and they're turning kids away for baseball. So I just think that it would be certainly in the wheelhouse if we could include that moving forward. Thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Downey, how would we go about that?
Through Madam Chair, that's quite a diversion from putting a facility like that in a neighborhood park. So if that's what council desires, I would like to see that in a motion. As you know, when we built the ball diamond in Stuart Burnett Park, there were people who were concerned with the lights, and this would be a lit facility if we put a ball diamond in there. So, and that was in a community park setting. So I do have some concerns. So if council wants us to do that, I'm okay with that. But I would like a direction from council, please.
Thank you. So what you're saying is a neighborhood park isn't really a fit for a ball diamond? Or certainly not according to our rec master plan?
Exactly. I mean, it's not something that we would traditionally do, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done. I can do it. I'd certainly like to support a council going forward that, yes, you want me to consider putting a lit ball diamond in this park, and I'll be happy to communicate that to the community.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
I was just looking for options. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the direction. I just think if you have a public space and there's a need in the community, why not just show the options? We can always go with a different one. I mean, there's tennis courts, and there's even in the mock-up budget here, there's lighting. They're going to be lit till 11 o'clock. So, I mean, maybe there's more lights for a baseball diamond or a soccer field. I'm just saying, show the options to the public, and they can make a decision based on all the information. That's really all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys?
Hi, thank you. Just very quickly, through me, Madam Chair, I think the residents are really good in that area that they have a survey out, I believe, and it's going to be, they're going to be providing a lot of feedback to us. I think there was some information sent just, I think, today or yesterday. So I think staff already has a pretty good idea of what they're interested in, including, some questions on the community garden. So I think we have a good head start for the public planning session. And when the community comes in, we'll be in a good position to kind of tie up those loose ends. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you. I don't want to complicate the process anymore or delay anything. But given that the park is right between two schools, Hartman and Rick Hansen, just to involve the children of the neighborhood, would it complicate things just for fun, just to send a note to their administration and just say, you know what, draw out your draft plan of what your ideal park would look like, just for fun, just to be inclusive. I know their parents are probably providing feedback anyway at the open house, but would that complicate things, or is that, from experience, not the best idea?
Mr. Downey?
Well, you really left me at the end there. I think it complicates things. Part of the complication is, first of all, getting any information out to the schools is extremely complicated, getting through the school board process. And then ensuring that we got comments back that we could, in a timely fashion, that we could act upon. And then what do we do with those comments, and who do we bring those forward to, and at what time do we bring those comments in? Do we bring those prior to going to the community? Theoretically, the children who are making the comments live in the community, but I do think it complicates the process. The school board takes advantage of of Hickson and Ada Johnson Park for their schools. I don't know that they would take a similar advantage of this park.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Councillor Abel for a second time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, the reason I suggested going outside to a landscape architect is maybe there's ideas in other communities, cities, that are just fabulous ideas that we may not even be aware of. So that's sort of, but I noticed that we didn't include like an amphitheater, so that if there was some music or gathering or whatever within the park area of the gathering, I would like to entertain sort of that idea. I saw it in Newmarket in the Fleury Park, and it's very modest looking. It's just the way they landscape and curve the land. You also see it at Montessori. If you go up Industrial North to St. John's, just a little bit of the landscaping that gives just the sounds, it creates a little spot. So these are sort of the reasons I'd like to incorporate, and I know if I don't make a motion that they may not be included in the next rendering that we see. So I'm hoping those sort of comments or the ideas, that's what I'm trying to think, something different long term. There's no skate park, but I know there's also a skate park just next door at Hartman, of course. But you know, a simple trail for bikes or whatever, because the motocrosses and the kids on the scooters might be a good place to hang out, and if the paths incorporated that, it's just all those sort of ideas. The reason I thought of environmental is maybe it's the pervious path for swales and stuff like that, but I'm sure that'll all be taken into consideration. I'm very wary about setting a budget because there may be just a fantastic idea that might be $15,000 out of the range and will be not even considered or presented to us. So I prefer a range if we could. So I may want to make an amendment that we set a range rather than a limit. A range between 1.2 and $2 million with the goal of hanging around at somewhere about 1.3. But if there's some great ideas to incorporate, and it was not a whole lot more, I would rather us have that option at council and to decide whether it's incorporated rather than staff just not even present it to us and just say it just exceeded the budget. So that's why I'm a bit wary of that budget. So if I can, I would like to put a range on that and make an amendment.
Councillor Humphreys. Thank you. The amendment to put a range of between
1.2 and 2 million.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a question through myself to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, when there's the public open house and the neighborhood comes and weighs in on what they'd like to see, I think they know that we want to please them, but we may not be able to give them everything depending upon the costs. And then it comes back to council and all of the features could be costed out and council would be able to weigh in then. Is that how it's usually done?
To you, Madam Chair. Usually what happens is there's minutes taken. So we record all the comments so that if member council saw that, you know, well, why didn't we consider what, you know, so-and-so said? Well, it's in the minutes. And we didn't put it in the design, but council is aware that that comment was made. Council can then decide whether or not they think, yes, that's something we would like to see happen in that particular park or not. So you will get all the information, but not everything that everybody is going to ask for. I mean, someone might come in and say they'd like an outdoor swimming pool here. Is that something you're willing to consider? Maybe not, but we might receive that comment. So we'll make sure that that comment's recorded, that a resident requested an outdoor swimming pool, but you might not see it in the design. And then you can make a determination of whether or not you want us to consider something along those lines. I think best if we move forward with a concept. We've already got some comments back from the residents with regards to this concept, so we already know we're somewhat on the right path. But as far as members of council wanting to perhaps move forward with a concept for a ball diamond or soccer field or something else, the open house will be a public open house, and I invite council to certainly participate in that and listen to the comments from the residents, so that when we come forward to council, you'll have a better understanding of some of the comments and the context in which those comments were received.
Thank you, and I hope we're not going to listen to somebody who makes just one comment and be more consensus of what the neighborhood wants, but that will come back to council and be debated. Okay, call a vote on unless anyone else wants to speak on the amendment. The amendment is that we put a range of between 1.2 and $2 million as a budget for this park. All those in favor of that? All those opposed? That doesn't carry. So moving on to the main motion, I believe everybody's spoken. As amended. All those in favor? Opposed? I think we just voted. Oh, you're just voting opposed to? No, I'm sorry. I just didn't understand what Councillor Perry was saying. You were just... I'm sorry. I apologize, but I think it's going to have to come to council if you want to speak on it. Thank you. Moving forward to number 8, Councillor Tom, I believe you pulled that.
Thank you. I'll move it.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, we had an inventory done on the pet cemetery on Friday last. I was able to go for the beginning portion of it. It looked like there was a lot of good work being done there. I know that your department's working on this. So I just wanted you to outline how this report and this moving forward through council will affect the pet cemetery.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Madam Chair. The pet cemetery is part of the original land holding Coots owners have retained, and so the implementing zoning bylaw in front of council this evening is really in response to council's direction a couple years ago when we approved the subdivision to zone for residential uses. The first phase of this overall development being those 42 lots, but also to zone a portion of the property, the open valley system, as a environmental protection zone and open space zones, which includes the pet cemetery, which has been conveyed to the town.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't in the report, and I know that this is the parcel of land where the pet cemetery is included. So obviously, we're moving hopefully towards national designation of that site, and I just wanted to make sure that if there's anything from a zoning perspective that we need to look at. But I do appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? So, Mr. Ramuno, for clarification, the pet cemetery is going to be fine. We don't have to worry about it. With respect to the town having that property and
through you,
taking care of it?
That's correct, Madam Chair, and as Councillor Tom mentioned, staff and a number of volunteers were out there on Friday to start their inventory of the pet cemetery, number of plots, and I think they recorded close to 400 plots, and they're just about complete, but they'll be out there again in the future just to complete that initial inventory. And our future plans are obviously to proceed with perhaps a designation of that pet cemetery once we have a plan in place and completed our inventory. And again, following that, once the development takes place, we will then be able to implement our trail system, which will provide that connection throughout this area and ultimately to the pet cemetery as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Thank you, Councillor Abel.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I know it's part of the parcel, it's different, but the pet cemetery, that property was conveyed to the town. So it's under our ownership.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Calling the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Back to item number 3. Councillor Tom, you pulled that one. I got it wrong. Councillor Thompson, you pulled that one. But he's not here. So, Madam Clerk, shall we go on to number 6? Or I think it's a courtesy to wait till he comes back to the table. You want to recess? It's only 12 after 8.
This is long by your standards.
Oh, sorry, you'll move it. Okay, let's move item number 6 forward. Councillor Perry's item. Councillor Perry, you're moving that item. Councillor Abel seconding it. Okay. Let's, Councillor Perry. Oh, we're voting to move it forward. Well, now that Councillor Thompson is back at the table. We've already voted on it. We've already voted. Okay. Madam Clerk. Were all those in favor of moving item 6 forward? All those opposed? Thank you. Madam Chair. Item number 3, I believe that was pulled by Councillor Thompson.
We voted to pull 6 forward.
Oh, I thought it failed. Okay, item number 6. Councillor Perry, seconder for that. Councillor Humphreys.
Just a quick question, Michael, please never leave the council chambers again. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Simonauskas. On the second page, if you look at the JOC construction graph, the y-axis only has every other label on it. So just for next week, is it possible that we can have a label for everyone, just have a new page put in?
Mr. Simonauskas.
Yes, through Madam Chair, we'll have that for the agenda for next week.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of item number 6? Opposed? That carries. Back to item number 3. Councillor Thompson, I
Thank you.
believe this is your item.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation as is.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Maracas, thank you.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas, just a couple questions, one of which on page 5 of the report, it says that we haven't been proceeding with the backflow prevention program since September 2014 due to resource constraints. Did that ever come to council prior to this report for a discussion about it, or was that even brought up at the budget time? I just don't remember, and so I'm just curious to know why that decision was made.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through Madam Chair. So in 2014, when the backflow prevention program was approved, staff provided me with a work plan to implement. That work plan never actually materialized, and when we had some staff changes, it became clear to me that there really wasn't sufficient resources to perform that project. So we were looking at alternate delivery models, and this was the model we thought we'd bring forward. So it was, I guess, an overzealous delivery program, and didn't materialize.
But based upon this report, if that position is approved, we'll then institute that program and move forward with it? Sorry, through you to Mr. Simonauskas.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. This position, that will be one of the key functions of this position. There are a number of other specific water and wastewater responsibilities that this function will actually assume from our unionized operations staff. And the goal in doing that is to actually allow our operations staff to focus on their expertise rather than have them dive into areas of work that may not be their strength.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I guess the bigger challenge is, since I've been on council, we've seen that water rates have risen 10% a year, pretty well year after year. And again, in this forecast, we're talking about similar rates rising until 2020. And so, you know, for my time on council, by the time this term ends, water rates for the residents will have doubled. Is there nothing else that we can look at to do to try and mitigate some of those impacts? Because, you know, the doubling of the cost over an 8-year period is concerning. One of the things that we've talked about, but not in too much detail, is whether or not the split in terms of what we draw from wells versus what we draw from the region would have any impact at all. So, through you to Mr. Simonauskas, is that something we can look at to mitigate it, or are there other things that we could have a conversation around this table about doing to try and minimize some of that impact? Because doubling of a cost over 8 years is a significant issue.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. I think maybe if council is able to look on page 9 of the presentation, the attached presentation, it's a graph that we've used over the last several years, and it really demonstrates the cost split between our costs and the region's costs. And if you look at that graph from the last 3 years and projecting forward, our controllable costs, the town costs, are actually fairly stable. There's moderate increases. So the pressures are really driven by the region's program. And right now they're representing about 66% of our total costs. The question with regards to changing water supply sources as a mitigating measure is not something that, and I'd be happy to have the region come in and speak to this specifically, but from my knowledge, it's not something that the region would entertain, because they have probably for the last 20 years moved into a uniform rate model. So regardless of the source of supply or the cost of supply, the rates or the costs are distributed across the entire program. So there's no sort of cheaper source or alternate sources that could result in cost savings. So I think that answers the two questions that I heard.
So just to be clear, again, through you to Mr. Simonauskas, so the fact that we draw 30% from our own wells and 70% from the region, even if you were to change that ratio, it would have no impact whatsoever?
That is correct. And they're actually not our wells, they're also regional wells.
I see that, yeah, for sure, Peel and so forth. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Okay, Councillor Abel.
Well, this is a fairly calm debate compared to last term when we talked about wastewater. The challenge that we have is that we have to, it's called total recovery, and what we have to do is we have to pull the water, and then we have to bring it back to the same state that it was. And what was never considered for decades in our area was that cost, and that's now a burden we have to factor in. So it's treating the sewage, it's the storm waters, it's all getting it back into the lake, and that costs a lot of money. And so the recovery process is an aggressive increase that was supposed to be done and completed, I think, in 2015, but then the region said we're extending it another 5 years. So it just goes on and on. We can't say don't supply us with water in Aurora, because we still have to treat water going back in. So we have to really get a communication that can explain that, and I know we've attempted it, and I don't hear as much, but it's a factor with cost. Do we put it in with our taxes? I mean, we've had all kinds of robust discussions over the years about this, and I think it's just a matter of educating and letting people know that that's what's happened in this case. And the region is tasked under the province to ensure that sustainability for water has to ensure that the water goes back clean, and that's a big cost that we're going to endure for this decade as we get to that stage. So I appreciate all the updates. It's been a learning process, and those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Any, Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. We've heard that there are, the bulk of the water costs are really out of our control because of the region. But the other end, in terms of minimizing the costs, is just reducing water loss. Now, even if we were to mitigate that loss by 100%, we found some kind of, neat technology, how much of an impact would that have on our overall bill? Is it something significant, or is it something small? I'm just wondering whether this would be an avenue that we should be pursuing then, seeing that we can't control the other variable. So if you can speak to that, please.
Mr. Simonovskis.
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. Actually, we have a water loss report that will be coming next cycle. It's already been approved by the CAO. And in that report, we speak to those costs and those opportunities. So I can provide some information there. If you'd like, we could wait till that report comes forward and have that information in front of us. It's about 11% total, but there's a breakdown as to what that 11% represents.
Thank you, Mr. Simonovskis. Okay. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Number 10. Councillor Abel, that's the Cultural Precinct.
I'll move it as is.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Abel, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. I just as an opening remark, I'm pleased to see this go back into the appropriate department, and that's the planning department. That's where it should have been, and I'm optimistic that we can establish a cultural precinct, and I'm looking forward to that going as it should. So that's just my introductory. I didn't want to spend any more time than just to say that.
Thank you. I think I saw a whole bunch of hands go up. Am I wrong on this? Okay. Nobody wants, Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief as well. I'm happy that we're having a reboot of this process. I think we're all interested in revitalization of downtown and even moving forward with the cultural precinct. Upon reflection on my role in this, I think that this is the best way to move forward rather than the quick timeline we originally set ourselves. And I'm fine with most of the milestones. However, I really want to stress that the Fulton study and the repurposing study, which is yet to be tabled, will be really guidelines and information for council. Those are not the concepts moving forward, for at least they're not what I would endorse as the concepts moving forward for this area. I could go into the details why I don't agree with the Fulton study and why I think that it's not the right direction for the cultural precinct. However, I do think that we've commissioned this study and we've got this information, so I'm happy to have it tabled and received and be part of our decision-making moving forward. But I am happy that this reboot has taken place, and I look forward to a robust discussion with both council and the public as to what we can do to really revitalize our downtown and really have a cultural precinct that the whole town can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, and I'm fully supportive of the report. I've had some great discussions with our CAO about how he sees this progressing throughout the year and helping us get to that point where council will make a decision whether or not to move forward and which path to take. As we all know, this has been something that's been on the council agenda for many years with regards to the buildings, Library Square, downtown revitalization, and I think it's incumbent upon this council to make a decision with regards to some of those long-standing issues. I'm certainly supportive of the first milestone, which we will be approving tonight, which is those guiding principles as outlined in the report, and I look forward to the next stage.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just briefly to add, I'm very happy to see this back. I think it's moving in the right direction. I love the public consultation process that will be going in order of every a step of the way. This is, it's a plan to aim for, just like our promenade plan. And it truly is giving the residents in our town hope that we're actually going to be implementing some exciting changes downtown. That'll be a win-win for everyone. So every step of the way will be public consultation, and I believe great decisions will be made to make it a place that everybody would want to go, a destination point. So I just excited to see it here, and I think it's absolutely a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you to Mr. Downey for the work you've done on this. It's a difficult, very difficult, obviously, issue. And Mr. Nadaronsky, I just have a question about the timing of this, because I'm really not in favor of having a lot of public consultation or meetings about this in the summer. Through myself again, to Mr. CEO. On page 6, the third milestone is June, July. June. And then it says that we'll also be going through the summer perhaps and into the fall. So where do you think when do you think most of the meetings will be held? You haven't been in Aurora so far in the summer, but a lot of Aurora leaves in the summer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as you noted, the milestone deadlines for particularly 3 and 4 get vaguer because we have more details to bring to council and to work out. We're conscious of the summer period and the delays or the problems we might have getting participation. So it really depends how quickly we can get into it in June and how much and whether the plan that we present to council for your endorsement is sufficient from your perspective in allowing enough public consultation. If it doesn't, there are some certain activities we might be able to take over the summer, realizing that it's going to be a slower pace, and it may lead to a final kind of wrap-up in September. But again, we'd like some time to work out those details and bring a comprehensive consultation plan to council for your approval.
Thank you. Is it possible maybe that something was done by the May 25th date? Well, I'll just leave that out there. Thank you. I know you. Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you. So the 14 concept plan is from a study. Do we have a study in our hands yet, through you, Madam Chair?
Sorry. I guess that would go, I don't believe we do. That would go to the CAO.
Sorry, through Madam Chair, the font, as expressed in milestone 1?
Well, I'm just looking, Mr. CAO, on page 3, where it says the 14 concept plan, block 1, 2, and on the next page, 3.
Yes.
Is that it?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's the plan that was already tabled earlier, and it just serves as background.
We spent $80,000 and we've got 3 paragraphs. I just want to clarify if there's something else on that.
Mr. CEO.
To you, Madam Chair, the intent was not to republish all that or to rehash all the, this is just to sort of draw a line and reflect back on all the information that we do have. So it's designed to be a very brief summary of a lot of work that has been done. So the basis is that to get us to milestone 1, there's kind of agreement that we've got all this body of information that's already sitting there. There's another piece that's going to come to you in the next cycle, and so on through the milestones. So it's not designed to capture all the work. The public process would certainly do a much better job of reflecting on all the information and perspectives that have already been considered.
But at this stage, because the first I've seen or heard an underground theater, so I'm just wondering, are we approving that today, an underground theater?
Mr. CEO.
Through you, Madam Chair, the intent is that you're not approving anything. You're acknowledging that all this information exists, that the council in the past months has gathered this information, and it's sort of sitting there, ready to be merged with the information that we propose to bring in the next cycle.
All right, I've been following it all along for months, so I never saw that. I was just wondering how that got in there. But if it doesn't mean anything, then I'll just leave it as it is. I need some clarification. I'm sure the public might want to understand that too.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Tom. Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, speaking to the second milestone, I think it's always a great idea to ensure that everyone's on the same page with regards to knowing how much skin they have in the game. And I think it was a great suggestion to put in a notional budget of $5 million because that essentially states to everyone that, and we agree that that's our notional commitment to this process if it does come to full fruition. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. CAO, that was we knew that the money, the amount had to be a fairly large amount so that everyone is under the correct understanding that this is a lofty project. Can you explain how the $5 million came about, please?
Mr. Nader-Rosny?
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, to reemphasize, it really is a notional number. There's not a lot of science to the number. It could be $3 million, it could be $10 million, it could be whatever council decides they want to invest in. Obviously, if the plan is supported by the community and council. The $5 million is just a number that's supposed to be a big enough number. The point that we think needs to be made and needs to be established fairly soon is that it's difficult to do a good, robust public consultation process, to go look at the development community, other people that might have an interest in a plan, without some sort of notional agreement from council that a large investment is prepared to be made by the community for the right project. So if the right project is never found, the investment is zero. If a project that we can't even envision is found and it's $10 million and it's the best one, then council can consider it then. But we really felt strongly that without some sort of a notional indication from council that yes, if the right plan can be achieved, that we're prepared to put big dollars, let's call it that. And so that's what $5 million is, big dollars.
Thank you, and I believe that before any money is taken from, any of the hydro money is spent, it has to go out to the public for approval as well. Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Mayor Daw, number 16 is yours. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll move as is.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to bring this to the attention of council. Sorry, this is a special system here that
This is a newfangled
staff
mic.
rigged up for this position. I could do the 2-microphone thing here and be the, Donald.
Good one.
I don't want to be the Donald, thank you very much. This is a report that actually came to Regional Council in January of 2014, and it was brought back last week based on Council receiving ours amongst other municipalities' notices of motion with respect to the OMB Summit and the OMB reform. So I thought it would be beneficial, and I know that some members of regional staff will be speaking on this issue. So this is just an opportunity to give council a bit of background as to what regional staff or regional position is with respect to the OMB reform. And it's been out there quite a while, and certainly I think it's fairly self-explanatory. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them, but I just thought it would be beneficial.
Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's some great information through this, and I just wanted through you to, I guess, Mr. Mayor, as our regional rep, I attended a committee of the whole last week, and while these were on the agenda, and I know that this will be on the agenda, I guess, at council this week, and I'm hopeful maybe someone will be pulling it and maybe looking to support or endorse it as the other 80 municipalities have, and kind of maybe giving a little bit of a push as the region kind of supporting it. So I'm hopeful maybe that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I was very glad to see this report. It's got some great information in it, and I was in support of everything, so hopefully that's how it's going to turn out. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Number 17, there's direction that's required on that. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, direction is required. There's correspondence that's been received and asking for endorsement of a resolution that is found with item 17. They're asking that for endorsement of that, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Aurora support Bill 158, Saving the Girl Next Door Act, 2016, support MPP Lori Scott's motion for multi-jurisdictional and coordinated task force of law enforcement agencies, Crown prosecutors, judges, victims services, and frontline agencies, and the copy of this resolution be forwarded to all members of provincial parliament and municipalities. So if council wishes to support and endorse this resolution, if someone would like to move that and second it, council can consider that.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councillor Maracas, you had your hand up first. Mayor Daw. Thank you. Thank you. Two speakers to this, Councillor Peary.
Although I don't have an issue with the resolution that's proposed, you know, I don't see anybody being able to have a problem with what's proposed. Is it not ultra vires, based on the wording? I find the process odd that an MPP is sending information down to us for us to send back up. It doesn't make sense to me, especially if it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what our council does on the whole. Again, it doesn't fall within our jurisdiction. I wholly support what's here. I'm just not sure if it falls within, you know, what we should be looking at.
Thank you, Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would just say that I think that, you know, the MPP is just pretty much looking for a strong voice coming back and having, you know, as many people saying the same thing, and it just looks better. We all know when the more people you have saying one thing, the more support you'll have when you bring it up and table it. So I think that's, you know, for me, you know, it's almost the same thing as what we're trying to do with the OMB reform. You know, we're looking to have as many people, even though it doesn't necessarily fall within our jurisdiction. The more of us that get together and say the same thing, the more chances are that you'll realize that change and actually affect some change. So that's why I'm in full support of this.
Thank you, Mayor Daw.
Just to Councillor Peary's, to Councillor Peary's point, could we go to the clerk and just confirm that this is a legitimate motion?
I would refer that to the Associate Solicitor.
Who would you like to refer it to?
Through you, Madam Chair. I mean, the motion that's before council, it merely speaks to the fact that council would endorse what's being proposed here by the MPP. I mean, it wouldn't have any actual power, I mean, because it's outside of the jurisdiction, but this merely supports what's being there, and it's asked to be sent forward. So I believe it is an appropriate motion to put forward by council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
I'm supportive of what's before us, and I think what it's calling upon is a coordinated approach that, you know, spreads across all lines of government, be it regional, municipal, provincial. It's about everybody working together to deal with this issue, and I see it is relevant, and so I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Any more comments? Sorry, Councillor Abel, did you want to speak?
Well, I just want to echo the comments. I mean, we did it with the blue dot. I mean, everyone should have clean water and a healthy place to live. I mean, how can you say no to that? So let's, you know, this is a little more serious. It would be the same as if it was gun control. You know, we shouldn't have execution. You know, so all these things are good, and we as a municipality have a moral conscience, and that's what we're lending our thought process here. So we've done it previous. I'm all too happy to endorse this as well. How it gets done and where it goes from here is completely out of our hands. But if it's a provincial, our job is to let the province know what the municipalities and the residents there sort of feel. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, and I've always spoken to this in the past, although it hasn't come up very often. You know, as a municipal council, it is our responsibility to speak out on issues, and I hope this isn't happening in our community, but it could be. So I'm also in support of this. Calling the vote, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Well, I thought it was going to be a long evening, but it's looking pretty good. I think we're at... I'm a very poor chair, I admit it. I got lucky. So, Madam Clerk, are we at new business? Thank you. We'll start on that side of the table. Councillor Maracas.
Nothing for me, Madam Chair, thank you.
Madam Chair, tomorrow night is the seniors volunteer appreciation from 6 to 8:30 over at the Senior Center. Looks to be a fine evening.
It's the Earth Week Fair, it's the public planning meeting. We got a busy evening. Councillor Thompson.
No new business.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, and I see the signs are there for the Earth Week, the big mobile signs. So, I've asked Mr. Simonauskas about these signs before, and they basically are the use for the infrastructure department for emergency sort of things. And how does one go about getting those signs up to do that message? If you don't mind my asking, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Simonauskas.
Through Madam Chair, it's really informal. A request is sufficient. We will communicate messages, whether it's directed from clerk's office or communications or through the mayor's office. Those signs are available for use. I mean, if we can help communicate messages that are valuable to the community, then they're available.
So my suggestion, if I may, Madam Chair, is while they're up and when the conclusion of the Earth Week is done, could we also just leave them there and change the message? Does it take long in the message to read about the litter cleanup that is taking place on Saturday? I think for the last 3 days, just to make the residents aware that that is going on as well. I think that's an important.
Yeah. Mr. Simonauskas.
Through Madam Chair, I believe that's already queued up. I mean, we do use those signs every year for the cleanup day, so I will confirm that, but I would imagine that that's already planned to happen.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys? Really? Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I usually don't try to work in public service announcements to GC, but I feel this is important to mention because this event is happening on Saturday. For any members of the public who are watching on the live stream or for members of the local press, the Queens York Rangers Army Cadets are heading out this Saturday in Aurora and other towns to collect wine, liquor bottles, and beer cans as part of their ongoing fundraising to send 40 cadets to Vimy Ridge in March of 2017 for the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. It's a hugely important milestone in our country's history, and certainly it's worth sending some young people out that way. So if anyone has any large quantities or would like a pickup, they can contact the Armory at 905-726-8600. If you email me, I can forward your information along as well. And the website is www.vimybound.ca. Anyways, I just thought I'd mention it because it is important, and if any members of the local press or, again, anyone online would like to participate, they can. And also that as part of the cadets, the air rifle marksmanship team competed in the provincial championships and came first. So, including a local lad by the name of Ethan Hoyes. So anyways, very important and very exciting. So they'll be heading to the national championships, which I think are in Manitoba. Anyways, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
That's absolutely great news. Councillor Kim. Councillor Perry.
It's not a public service announcement, it's general information.
Yes.
Yes. The Earth Week Fair tomorrow, it is BYOM. If you'd like coffee, bring your own mug. They are not being supplied. The event starts at 5 and runs until 9. We, of course, will be here at 7 for our public planning meeting. And maybe somebody on staff could let me know, but I seem to be recognizing some new pictures of former councils on the wall behind us. I feel like some new pictures were put up of previous councils and pictures I don't think I'd seen before. Maybe some clarity on that, but just something to be advised of.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Mr. Simonovskis, you are our part of the facilities management team is in your team, so
Maybe you can find out about that for us. Perhaps to Mr. Downey or Mr. Nadaronsky, Nadarosny, is that better? I hear that the Theatre Aurora lease is up or is being in the process of being renegotiated. So is this something that is going to be coming to council? Is this part of the general report that you were going to do for us, Mr. CAO?
Through you, Madam Chair, it will be included in the general report, but but also as a separate item, it will be coming to council to finalize the renewal of the existing lease. But it will be captured in the lease summary that council's asked me to do as well.
Thank you. So through to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, I think there's going to be some changes in this, or proposed changes in this lease. Is the council going to see the lease?
Through you, Madam Chair, with regards to the lease, it is up, and yes, it is being renegotiated. There are some changes that staff are recommending be implemented in the lease, as well as Theatre Aurora have also identified some things they would like to see changed in the lease. We will be bringing a report forward to council that will identify those changes, and so that council will be aware of what those changes will be. Whether or not the report will contain the entire lease is something that we haven't considered at this point, as we haven't got the report completed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last sentence.
We haven't prepared the report, so we normally don't attach leases to reports, so we haven't had that discussion at senior management as to whether or not we wish to attach the lease to the report.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Abel.
On the matter of the lease, Madam Chair, when did that lease expire? Through you, Madam Chair.
Has it? Has it expired, Mr. Downey?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you what date. Yes, it's an ongoing lease, so it continues on as is until a new lease is enacted.
And could you provide that date for us for council next week?
Certainly.
And is the agreement, through you, Madam Chair, is the agreement for the farmers market complete?
Mr.
Sure.
Downey?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Tasha? Ms. Van Leeuwen, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have received the applications, the vendor applications. They're being processed now. The road closure permit has been issued for Wells Street, and we're working with the farmers market on the placement of a sign advertising the opening.
There, through you, Madam Chair, there was some, as I recall when we talked about it at council, there was some talk about placement of vehicles for the farmers that may have to come onto the town park property. Was that issue addressed?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it has. They will not be accessing the park to bring vehicles into the park. They've provided a letter confirming that.
Because it seemed to me they were asking for that permission.
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Madam Chair, through discussions with the farmers market, we've come to an agreement, and they've agreed not to bring the vehicles into the park. They will pull the vehicles up as close as they can to the gate. They will unload and deliver the products to the vendor booths.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We move into motion for closed session. This is for litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the town or a local board. Closed session report, Aurora Family Leisure Complex. And also the second one, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the town or local board. Yonge Street. May I have a motion to resolve into closed session? Are we going to be reporting out? It doesn't sound like No, we won't be reporting out because we're going to be, thank you. Motion, Councillor Maracas, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Motion to adjourn, Mayor Daw, Councillor Peary, all those in favor? Okay. I hate this.